What's going on, everyone? It's your boy back at you again with another Tommy Reads Xmen. Before we get into today's issue, I want to give a shout out to the Marvel Epic Collection. This is what I've been reading all the X-Men off of thus far, and it has been fantastic. I'll give it a little close-up. Epic Collection X-Men. This one is called Children of the Atom. And if you're a fan of old school comics, definitely check this out. It's a little bit pricey, $40. Pricey if you're poor like me. But yeah, definitely check it out. You can check it out on some websites. You might get a good deal on it. Pick them up. They're great. First 23 issues of X-Men are in there. And that, segue, is what we're talking about. X-Men number 23. That is today's issue of Tommy Reads X-Men from August 1966. Written by Roy Thomas, again, with art by Warner Roth. Now, I did my research this time, and Warner Roth is actually an alias of Jay Gavin. Jay Gavin's been the artist who's been providing us with the artwork for the last few issues. Apparently, he was using aliases because he was also doing some work for DC. They didn't much take too kindly to him, double dipping at Marvel, so you had to go use an alias. But same team in the last few issues, kicking it with the X-Men style. So this one is called To Save a City. Now, if you remember from last issue, it's been a minute since we've done this, but Count Nefaria, horrible name, wants to destroy Washington, D.C. and hold it up for ransom, actually. He wants $100 million. And a little Austin Powers shout out there for you. People don't talk about Austin Powers quotes too much, but they need to come back, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, he wants the X-Men to help him. And so he had his henchmen, this D-list of people like Unicorn and Plant Man and people, they had to literally tell you where they were coming from. Like they were like Iron Man villains or Tales to Astonish or whatever. And literally tell you who they were so you could be like, oh, okay, well, I guess, they fought the Human Torch or whatever. And I guess that's why they're putting hands on the X-Men, because they whooped the X-Men. X-Men are kidnapped, and Count Nefaria is like, you go and join me or else. And then he walked away. And then his plan, so his giant plan to get that 100 mil from the government is to put a giant dome around Washington. Now, I don't know if this is done before, but a young Stephen King under the dome is like, yeah, that sounds like, I'm going to put that in the old noodle for later. The Simpsons writer is probably young at the time. We're like, oh, you know what? That might work for a movie. We'll put that in the old noodle for later. People are putting things in noodles for later. So the X-Men are trying to get free while Nefaria is off doing nefarious things. And Jean decides to contact the professor. Why they didn't think of this the first second they got kidnapped, I don't know. But Jean goes to contact the professor and she's not getting through. So we cut to Professor Charles Xavier in the X-Mansion. And he's tinkering with whatever. He's building a new gadget. And then he mentions to himself, just casually, that he has mentally sealed off the X-Men from disturbing him. Because he don't want to get disturbed. He's working on his thing, and he needs solid concentration. So he put the X-Men on, he's not paying attention to him. I was going to say speakerphone, but that's wrong. He's basically ghosting the X-Men, if you want to use slang terms that I don't really understand 100%. But yeah, so he's ghosting the X-Men, but his phone rings, so he mentally sealed off the X-Men. But I mean, if the phone rings, and it's a telemarketer, he's like, oh, I better take this. Why, yes, I am interested in Life Alert. So the phone does ring in the issue, and it's the government who are saying, you need to get down to Washington and talk to us about the X-Men. And he's like, well, why? They're like, find out, and then hung up. And, Papa Chuck like a good mystery, so he's like, I better go see what's going on. So the dome's across Washington. People are freaking out, and Count Nefaria uses holograms of the X-Men to kind of frame them for the situation. And he's like, I need you to, go get the money for me. Basically. And now that I framed you, you're already accused of the crime, you might as well do it, right? And the X-Men are like, no, we're not going to free up, we're not going to work for you. And then Papa Chuck gets to Washington. He gets to Washington and they're like, you're a mutant expert, right, Professor Xavier? And he's like, oh yeah, expert. And then he doesn't tell him he's a mutant. He doesn't tell him he kind of knows the X-Men, and believe you me, if it got thick real quick, Papa Chuck gonna flip on the X-Men because there's 1,000 yous and only one of me. I'm Charles Xavier, and y'all ain't. Remember that. I can find more X-Men, but you can't find another Papa Chuck. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so he's like, oh, you know what? I better take this caller ID block. That was what I was looking for. Caller ID blocking. Still ain't it. We'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway, Papa Chuck basically is like, oh, you know what? I should probably contact the X-Men at this point. They probably have been trying to call me. And so he mentally contacts them just as Jean she finally works her mental magic and she frees Cyclops. He had a beam. He had like a thing over his eye so he couldn't use his beams. And so she moves it just askew enough that moves it just askew enough that he's able to optic blast and free Jean, and then he starts freeing the other X-Men. Now, this is a life or death situation. They need to get away from Count Nefaria. And while he's freeing people, Hank decides to take this opportunity. Not Doctor yet. Hank McCoy decides to take this opportunity to be his classic jerk self and be like, you know, Scott, I mean, I noticed you always free me last, but I guess that's okay. I guess I'll live with it. Like, he could have been like, dude, I ain't gonna free you at all. I don't even like you. You ate lunch alone last week. Yeah, I don't remember that. Anyway, so Charles, the mutant expert, decides to tell the X-Men, go along with Nefaria. Like, go along with nefarious, and we're gonna pretend like we with him, and then we gonna solve the day. We're gonna get that W. The W. West Side. Anyway, so they're gonna get the win, so they break out, and then Count Nefaria is at his lair, pushing all these switches and gadgets to keep the dome going. And they're like, hey, we escaped, but, you know, we like your plan. And then he goes with it. He doesn't ask, how'd you guys get out of the thing? He doesn't ask, you know, how'd you find me even here in this lair? There's a bunch of rooms in here. How'd you find this one? He's just like, cool. See, I knew you'd get with it when I started talking dollars and cents, because I know you probably ain't making that much money, if at all. And they're like, you know, we got student fees and whatever. Let's do this. And he's like, let's do this. He never questions, A, how they got free, and B, why they're suddenly on board with his plan after they were, like, high and mighty. Like, we ain't never gonna follow you, Count Nefaria. We follow people with cool names, like, and then Professor, and then somebody's like, don't say his name, because he will freak out. So, the X-Men get into the dome. Nefaria opens a little window for him to go in, and they start to go get the money. Now, as far as the other people are concerned, the X-Men have turned on the world, and this is all their plan. So randoms start throwing bricks at him, start shooting at him. Well, it was the police who started shooting at him. They shot first, and then asked questions later for the mutants. Excuse me. Anyway, so Charles decides to go astral plane and find Count Nefaria. Now, when he does this and leaves his body, it just looks like he's asleep. And the security and the government that are there with him are like, dang, this old dude passed out. Maybe, you know, he was nipping at the cooking sherry before he got here, because he crashed pretty hard. And so he's like, that's asleep. And he finds Nefaria, who's by himself. He's by himself, but he's monologuing his whole plan. Like, who does that? I mean, we, the reader, need to see it and need to hear what he's doing. But who's like, yeah, and then once I get the money, I'm going to go, and he's pulling switches while he's doing this. This is why I'm doing this. I'm not like, you know, Dirty Bird or whatever. And he's like, yeah, so once I get this, I'm going to do this, and imaginary cigar, the X-Men will be foiled. Put out the imaginary cigar because I don't smoke. Anyway, so at this point, I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, why does Count Nefaria even need the X-Men? Like, he had a D-list of bad guys, and they put hands on the X-Men. They straight up whooped their ass. And so, why would he need the X-Men to carry out this plan when he could just have the henchmen do it? The X-Men don't even really need to be in this issue, to be honest with you. And then, as if the writer's like, yup, the next panel was the henchmen planning a side thing. They're like, okay, y'all, get in here. Get in the huddle. huddle. So, as soon as the X-Men get the briefcase, $100 million, yeah, kept in one tiny little briefcase. I know. Right? That's what I'm saying. So, once they get it, we gonna attack them. Like we did before. Should be easy. Plant Man, use your plants. Scarecrow, get your crows hungry. We gonna do this. Ready? On 3. D-level henchmen. 1, 2, D-level. I said on 3 we go. See, this is why we need to practice, man. Now we look embarrassed. Anyway, so the henchmen decide to grab as I just said, the henchmen decide to grab the briefcase from the X-Men and then do their own thing, screwing over Count Nefaria. So the X-Men and them get into a tussle. And the X-Men got the briefcase, and they're tossing it. Iceman, catch! Cyclops, catch! They're tossing it around like the little giants, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. I thought I had a copy of Little Giants. Turns out I don't. It would have been way funnier with the clip, but, I mean, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, so. Let's keep the review going. Right? You guys remember that clip, right? Yeah. So anyway, so they're tossing it around like the little giants, and then in Nefaria's lair, so the X-Men keep the briefcase. The other guys don't get the interception. And so in Nefaria's lair, this masked figure, he's got bandages all over his face, he's got a fedora, there's a whole mishmash of styles, but he sneaks in to Nefaria's lair. That was a sneak. Anyway, so Jean shows up with the briefcase, and she's like, well, here, I guess. And still, they're not questioning the professor's plan. But, I mean, it seems like the X-Men did the dirty work. So, this masked figure, while Nefaria's like tough-talking Jean, be like, yes, now you go. What? Who? What? Who are you? And then the masked man starts pushing buttons. This is a weird ending. Bear with me. The masked man starts pushing buttons, and he messes up Nefaria's machine. He blows it up. The dome disappears. It don't crack. It just disappears into thin air, which makes me think, if I'm a person there stuck there, like, was the dome there the whole time? Or is it still there? Like, so anybody could just find this machine, rewire it, and we'll be stuck in a dome again. What? Anyway, that's an irrational fear for another time. But the masked man messes up the machine. Nefaria, he gets away in the drama because the masked man rips off his bandages, and standing before you is Professor Charles Xavier. That's right, Papa Chuck got the walks. He got the legs. His gadget that he was building is a thing that lets him walk on up. And I don't know what that was. It was funnier in my head. Anyway, he lets him walk up, and he says he built this thing that, neurons, blah, blah, blah. I'm no scientist, but it basically gives him the ability to walk. And the X-Men are like, cool. And then Jean's like, what? Where'd Nefaria go? And they're like, oh, yeah. And then Papa Chuck's like, oh, don't worry about that. That's over. The Coast Guard's going to get him. And then we cut to Nefaria on a boat with the unicorn. He's the only one of the henchmen who got away from the battle with the X-Men. And he is like, oh, let's open this briefcase. And then the briefcase disappears because Papa Chuck put the mind whammy on him. He put the mind whammy on him, and we didn't even know. We didn't even know because he explains it all off casually in the last panel. He's like, yeah, the Coast Guard are going to arrest him, and I did this with the briefcase. Briefcase is right there. I mean, I don't know why y'all can't see. Oh, wait, because I put the mind thing. Y'all, oh, here it goes. Boop. And then they're like, oh, the briefcase. And then that's it. He's like, don't take away from the real story. Don't take away from Papa Chuck can walk with y'all. Let's go get an ice cream. Oh, Jean, you got a letter at the mansion. I've been carrying it with me this whole time, though we never mentioned it before. And Jean opens the letter. But before that, let's get to this. The ending was so weird because out of nowhere, Charles can walk. And the X-Men still, if you're the people of Washington, the X-Men are still the people that took that briefcase. And granted, they probably returned it off panel. But normal people don't know that. Imagine turning on the news and be like, the X-Men stole $100 million today. And that was it. They got away. So, Jean gets a letter. That was a weird aside. It was a weird ending, and we'll get to more of that in the final thoughts, because I know y'all clamoring to hear more about this weird ending. And Jean gets a letter, and she opens it, and she's like, oh. And they're like, what? What's your problem? But they said it nicer than that. But that was the basic gist of it. What's your problem? And she's like, well, I gotta leave the Xmen now. Cliffhanger ending. Cliffhanger ending. And final thoughts on this. This was about a 6.5 out of 10. And I'll tell you why. The action was good. The action was good, but I just was not feeling Nefaria and the D team. I wasn't feeling... It could have been the Z team. Because, I mean, these people were not good villains. And yet they handled the Xmen like... Well, they are children, but like they were children. And like they whooped them. I don't know why they didn't whip them again. Even though, just because the Xmen needed a win for the story, like, wrap it up. But, like, the villains were lame. The ending was completely weird, because all of a sudden, Papa Chuck can walk. Now, I don't know what they're going to do with that, but we will see. And, you know, I'm giving it because the action was good. I'm giving it 3, and then 3.5 because it inspired the whole... I'm feeling like it's inspired the whole dome thing. Of, you know, let's throw a city under a dome. And, you know, that's... You know, I like Stephen King a lot, and, you know, I liked the Simpsons movie, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other examples that aren't coming off the top of my head, but if they do, and you can think of one, throw it in the comments here, and yeah, so, started the dome thing as far as I'm concerned, so that's 3.5 points right there. 6.5 out of 10, that's math. That's math. Anyway, this has been Tommy Reads X-Men, issue 23, come back with us again. Got a lot of cool stuff on the channel. Like and subscribe down here. Every like and every subscription, every comment, it helps the algorithm, helps get the word out about the channel. So I appreciate you doing that, at least. Thank you. I appreciate it sincerely. And yeah, come back again next week. And next week like I said, I'm done reading from the Epic Collection, so it's gonna be from Marvel Unlimited. So looking forward to a new format and checking that out and reading the X-Men. Continue to do so. Thank you for checking us out. Later.